Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today. My name is Brendan Larcom. I'm the product manager of precision gauges at Mahr Incorporated. Today, we're going to be talking about the Millimess dial comparators. You can see that we're going to be talking about some of the features and benefits and some applications and target customers and some competitive analysis. And we're going to be talking about how our customers and our end users can really benefit from the overall uses of this gauge, what sort of target industries are really useful for this gauge, and in general, how we can go out there and really solve some of our customer problems and make good with the customer. So we're going to start off with features and benefits. Then we're going to go to applications and target customers, and then we're going to do a little bit of a competitive analysis at the very end before I open it up for questions at the end. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the Millimess 2000 and 2001, the W and the WIs. There are four variations of this basic comparator. It has from our 30,000 foot view down. Top line notes, these comparators have really high accuracy. They have a base error of 0.4 microns or 16 microinches. They incorporate a really tough ball bearing design. The ball bearings that are actually in this are designed and produced by Mahr, especially for this gauge. So the bearing in there is what really gives this gauge a lot of its accuracy. It's highly rigid, highly tough, and it's one of the key reasons for why this gauge works as well as it does. In addition to that, it is IP64 rated, and it features a fully sealed touchscreen display. We'll get into more details about that further into the presentation. It has integrated tolerance lights, USB and wireless connectivity, and a built-in rechargeable battery. So the technology behind the Millimess 2000 and 2001 it's a very well proven technology that's been used in the metrology industry for decades now, called LVDTs. Accuracy, which you can see listed here, that 0.2, and then the more you get away from that from the null point of the probe, you get more and more inaccurate. So as you can see from the specs below, the VLDT, the very linear differential transducer in the Millimess, is based on Mahr's P1301 probe. Again, with that high precision ball bearing with low friction, high sensitivity, and again, very, very stiff. So again, there's not a lot of play in the motion of the comparator. It's again, very, very accurate for that reason. It's going to have a small measuring range, plus or minus a millimeter. But as we know, with metrology equipment, the more range you add to a product, the more inaccurate it becomes. So that's one of the trade-offs we have for such a high accuracy in this digital comparator, that we have a shorter range. But as you can see from the table there, listing what sort of error limits you can see at the absolute range, even when you go to the full ends of scale, plus or minus 1 millimeter, your error limit is only going to be 1.4 microns, plus or minus 0.7. So again, very, very proven technology, very capable, very accurate. So we're going to go into a little bit of difference now between the 2000W and the 2001W. The main difference between the two models is the 2000W and the 2000WI are for static measurements. They have 11.5 millimeter tall. They have symbols for tolerance functions. They can do with go, no go, and warning limits. And what I mean by static measurements is that it just continuously takes a live reading. Whatever the instantaneous reading from the probe is that's what's going to be put on the display of the comparator. Whereas the 2001W and the 2001WI can do static and dynamic measurements. By dynamic measurements, I mean a max, min, or a TIR. When the max or the min function is turned on, the indicator, or the comparator, I should say, will capture and hold the highest reading if you're in max mode, the smallest reading if you're in min mode, or the difference between the max and the min, which we call our TIR, or total indicator runout, are very good for finding more complicated features on some, say, round parts. So if we're looking at a shaft or an ID, we can very easily see the the biggest diameter, the smallest diameter, or the variation in diameter using the TIR mode. To help with the TIR mode, we sacrificed on the digits. So instead of being 11.5, they are now 9 millimeters tall. But to offset that, we now have a scale and a running pointer. So even though the digital display, when it's in max, min, or TIR mode, will be displaying and holding that max, min, or TIR value, you can still see that you can still track the movement of the indicator by watching the pointer going through the tolerance zones on the scale indicator, on that horizontal scale indicator. The, I think, greatest features for the Millimess is this sealed touchscreen display. So as you can see on the Millimess 2000W and the 2001W, it's a fully sealed touchscreen, highly resistant to the intrusion of oils, lubricants, and coolants. The glass itself is fully tempered from scratch and shock. It's sensitive enough to be used with gloves. And Mahr will also offer optional screen protector and cases for additional protection from the dangers of the shop floor that these gauges often live on. So again, if you take a look at the slides here, you can see there are no buttons. Everything is completely touchscreen. And what that really helps out with is stopping the incursion of foreign debris such as chips or dust or dirt, coolant, cutting oil, any kind of liquid from getting inside of the 2000W and the 2001W. It makes these gauges very, very robust, and you'll hear me talk about this later, but really ideal for any sort of highly dirty environment where you need to be very accurate. So think grinding, think honing, anything with oil or diamond dust or cutting fluid. The 2000W and the 2001W really lends itself to that sort of environment because of this touchscreen display. Moving on, both the 2000W and the 2001W have integrated tolerance lights. They're built into the top layer, to the top row of buttons, where the light all the way on the left-hand side, that when that comes up, that's going to be red for your no-go. Your middle light will be green for go, and your button all the way on the right or on the left with its light will be yellow, telling you that you either need to rework or you're approaching your tolerance. You can, of course, program those tolerances, and you can also program nominal values. Warning limits themselves you cannot program what the exact warning limits that you want into this gauge, but you can set the warning limits to be at 10, 20, or 30% of the total part tolerance. When the Millimess 2000W and 2001W are on battery power, the lights will flick on and off as you pass through the tolerance zone. But if you're on main power and plugged into either a computer or a wall outlet where the battery is continuously getting power from an outside source, the lights will continually stay on. So in the real world, what does that look like? Well, if you're measuring a part and the minute it goes in tolerance, the green light will flash and then go off. But the minute the second cross from intolerance to out of tolerance, the red light, the no-go light, will flash and then turn off. Same thing for the yellow limit, for the rework and the warning limit. That will also flash. So in theory, as your part goes from good to bad, the light will flash green for good, and then that green light will go off. The yellow light will come on as you're getting close, as you hit your warning limit, telling you you're approaching your tolerance. And then finally, if you go totally out of tolerance, again, the no-go, the red light will pop up and tell you that you're out of tolerance. These tolerance lights, again, are really simplify the measuring operations for our operator. They technically don't really need to pay attention to the measuring screens, so to the measurements itself. All they have to do is watch the tolerance lights as they go in or out of, as the measurements go in or out of tolerance. This is really good for ID and OD applications such as bore gauges, plug gauges, and OD gauges. And depending upon what type of gauging you have, what type of application you're using, you can see in the pictures below how the warning limits and the tolerance limits really work. If you're doing a straight height measurement, your green is going to be, your go zone is going to be right in the middle there, surrounded by your warning limit. Then you go out of tolerance into your red. Same thing if you're doing an inside measurement, you can see the rework is going to be on the inside of the ID, and then as you get oversized, you go into the red zone. Both the 2000W and the 2001W have connectivity to a computer, so you can do data export. This is going to be one of the difference between the 4 variations of this Millimess 2000 gauge, where if it has the I after it, so you can see all the integrated wireless is available on the 2000WI and the 2001WI. That uses Mahr's integrated wireless technology. We use an ANT plus wireless protocol that allows for on-demand data transmission, which extends the life of the battery of this unit. When you're using our integrated wireless system, that works in conjunction with our Larcom professional data transfer software. The Larcom professional software is completely free. You can go onto our website, www.mahr.com/Larcom, and download the software for free. No registration or purchase required. And with that Larcom professional software, you can remote control or remote program the unit, and you can also set the unit up for operator lockout, so that when it's on the shop floor, it cannot be manipulated by operators unintentionally or intentionally. When you're talking about our USB data transfer capability, we actually have a brand new cable that came out with this unit. We call it the DKU1. It's a bi-directional interface. Again, very, very easy to set up with the Larcom software. The USB cable, the DKU1, it comes with the Millimess, so when you buy it, it'll be right in the box, along with a wall charger, and that data cable also doubles as a power supply. So when you plug the Millimess into a computer or into the wall outlet adapter that is also included, you can use that to draw power. We also have another optional data cable for a Digimatic protocol called the DKD1. This is compatible with all Digimatic devices, very common on the Mitutoyo U-Wave systems and MeasureLinks. But like all Digimatic devices, when you're using the Digimatic cable on the Millimess 2000W or 2001W, you can only transmit data. It's a one-directional signal. You cannot remotely program the indicator or the comparator while it's using that Digimatic cable. You can only do that with the USB and the integrated wireless. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the Millimess 2000 and 2001W has an integrated rechargeable battery. It's a lithium-ion battery, which the internal battery itself has 150 hours of runtime built into it, and it takes 12 hours to fully charge. So if you're doing mobile measurements, if you have this on an inspection cart where you have a roaming inspector going from machine cell to machine cell, the comparator can run off of its internal battery power to collect measurements. Or if you're using this gauge in, say, a bore gauge or an IDO, say a portable bore gauge, like a sweeping style bore gauge or a Diatest or Dimentron plug, or a split ball plug like the 844K that's offered by Mahr, you can also use that to run off the battery power. And again, you get 150 hours of runtime. in that configuration. The 2000 and 2001W can also be run purely by wall power coming from the USB data cable. That's going to lend itself for more stationary and permanent style gauges. So when we get to applications later, when we go through the ID/OD gauging, where these comparators are permanently in place, they're on a gauging bench, they don't move. Parts come from the machining cell to the gauging bench to get checked. In those instances, we can leave the USB data cable permanently plugged in, and we can supply it with either the USB power supply unit, which comes with the gauge, that just plugs into your standard outlet, or we can draw power directly from a PC or USB hub. On the display, there will always be, on both models, there will always be a battery capacity or charge status shown there. On the you can see it's going to be all the way on the left-hand side of the comparator display, right next to the measuring value, where you can see the current level of battery charge. So again, that'll make it very easy for your operators to tell if the battery is fully charged, needs to be charged, or whatever the charge status is at any given time. Here on the screen, we have all four variations of the Millimess 2000. We have the 2000W and 2000WI, the 2001W and the 2001WI. You can see if it has the lowercase I icon, that means it's going to have an integrated wireless. Again, that'll work with Mahr's wireless technology and our iStick to wirelessly transmit data to the Larcom professional software. Only the 2001W and the 2001WI have the capability to do the dynamic modes, that max min TIR capability. And you can see the range there, plus or minus 1 millimeter. And you can see our pricing below. We start off at $958 for the 2000W, and the 2001W with the dynamic and the wireless maxes out at $1,170. We think that's a very good value for money, especially when you compare it to some of the other solutions that you have to get the same level of performance that you would get out of a base gauging amplifier and LVDT probe. We'll see a little bit more about that in a future slide. So just hold tight on that one. But next up, we have all the optional accessories for the Millimess 2000W and 2001W. As you can see on the screen, we have of course, as I mentioned before, the optional screen protector and case protector. We have the iStick there. As you can see, that's the USB receiver that plugs into your laptop. And that allows your laptop or computer to work with the 2000WI and the 2000WI. To take data wirelessly from the comparator and put it right on into the Larcom measuring software. We also have a lug back that can be swapped out on the back of the unit. So if you need to mount if you don't want to mount this by the stem, you want to mount it by a lug back, you can remove the back that comes with it, and you can put the lug back on in either a horizontal or vertical configuration. We also have a variety of different springs, different measuring force springs. So if you need to measure, if you need to have a certain total dead load coming from the comparator, from the 2000 or the 2001, we have optional springs that you can put in, that you can swap out the stock spring for one of our optional springs in here to get the exact total dead load you need for your application. Typically, when we see customers or end users that need to use these measuring force springs, they're measuring something that is compressible. So think any type of foil, film, paper products, any type of cellulose-based product where you're measuring anything that will compress under load by using a specific force measuring spring. You can dial in the force to exactly what you need according to what's called your ASTM specification so that way you can get the exact gauging force you need to be repeatable as you measure all of your compressible films, foils, and celluloid products. We also have a variety of lifters. So you can see the bottom three pictures here. We have a 2000P, which is a pneumatic lifter. You can hook that up to an outside power supply with a 3mm hose, anywhere from 5 to 8 bar of pressure. And you can use that to lift the contact point of the comparator up into the body of the comparator. So that way you can load parts underneath the comparator in any type of fixture gauge that you may be using. You also have the 2000H, which instead of pneumatic pressure uses a manual cable that you can pull or retract, pull it in. And then we also have the range limiting cap, which is called the 2000M. That is an external bushing that threads on to the top cap, and you can use that to limit the total range of the comparator if you have any applications that call for it. So before you said you saw how on our pricing, I'm sure some of you got a little bit of sticker shock there, but when you look at the level of performance that you get out of the 2000W and the 2000WI, including the wireless variations, you're getting a base accuracy of 0.4 microns, and you get selectable resolutions all the way down to either 5 millionths of an inch or 1/10 of a micron. And typically, to get that level of accuracy, you have to get something like a gauging amplifier and a probe. So if you were to buy the equivalent gauging amplifier and probe from Mahr, the equivalent to that would be the C1200 and the 1301 probe. And again, when you compare the price point there of $2,205 compared to $958, you're almost double the price for the same level of accuracy and resolution. And as we all know, accuracy, resolution, and price are really the three things that drive a customer's decision-making process when they're selecting a gauge for their application, for their factory. They're looking at what level of performance they can get at individual price points. So we're very proud to offer the Millimess 2000W and the 2001W at the price points we are, where you're basically, again, getting you're getting the same amount of performance that you traditionally need out of a system that traditionally, with the comparator and with the amplifier and probe, and that would traditionally cost double the amount of what the Millimess 2000 and 2001W would cost. So again, great value for money. We feel like this is going to be highly successful with our customers where they have any type of high accuracy requirements, or if they are looking to move away from the gauging amplifier and probe system, where maybe they need a smaller form factor compared to an amplifier and probe. The Millimess 2000W and 2001W really goes a long way, giving them that performance at a smaller price point. So now we're going to talk about some particular applications for the 2000 and 2001. One of the big things that we see out there, any of you who have spent any time in a gauging lab will recognize the C.E. Johansen microcator. The C.E. Johansen microcator, they were Swiss made. It's a legacy gauge from the 60s or 70s. They were made all the way up into the 80s. They are a purely analog comparator, no electronic parts, all just gears and springs in there. They can repeat to 1 millionth of an inch. They have a highly specialized movement where you basically have two coils that get wound tighter and looser. Basically, as the contact point moves up and down, and then as that coil gets tight or loose, it moves the indicator point on the microcator. Very, very specialized gauge. It really is a legacy gauge, and not that it's old. It's legacy in terms of its prolific presence in the metrology space. These were one of the first gauges that could repeat down to the millionth. Great certainty and accuracy. Really great gauge. They were used all over the world. You'll see them all across the country in gauge labs, precision honing centers, on the shop floor, where anybody's really looking for high accuracy applications. You will find one of these C.E. Johansen microcators. C.E. Johansen, the one I have pictured up on here, is one of the lesser known C.E. Johansen microcators where it has the full dial. You guys might have also seen the half moon style C.E. Johansson microcator, where instead of a full dial like the one I have pictured on the display here, it's a half moon style dial. Both the full dial and the half moon style dial can be replaced by the Millimess 2000 and 2001W. It's a perfect replacement for that application. It has the same level of accuracy, the same level of range. We even have an adapter, so you can use the new Millimess in the old microcator stands. We got a part number down there for it, 2262248, and customers can order that to plug in the new Millimess directly into their old comparator stands. So it's anywhere. If you have any customers who are familiar with the C.E. Johansson gauges, these were very popular in the automotive and aerospace industries in the 60s and 70s. Anywhere, again, where you're doing precision grinding, honing, and lapping, you'll see a lot of these microcators. And again, the Millimess will be a perfect, almost drop-in replacement for those gauges. The Millimess 2000 is also a great upgrade in terms of resolution and accuracy on IDOD gauges. So pictured on the screen here, I have Mahr's 36B IDOD gauges, but you can find IDOD gauges made from a number of OEM manufacturers. And the Millimess 2000 has an 8mm stem, as does the 2001. So they can just, again, it's just plug and play. You can take out your old indicator or comparator, put in the new Millimess, and you get a huge upgrade in terms of resolution and accuracy on the gauge. It's a great way to upgrade your gauging capability without having to completely retool or buy new gauges. You're basically just buying a new display that, again, will give you increased resolution and increased accuracy. And again, this will not just work on the Mahr 36B IDOD gauge, but it will also work on competitive IDOD gauges from other manufacturers, such as, say, Mitutoyo, Starrett, Fowler, any of them out there. Continuing along the theme with upgraded resolutions and accuracy on IDOD gauges, again, the Millimess 2000W and 2001W have an 8mm stem, so they can go directly into an OD snap gauge, like I have pictured on the screen. And again, you're going to be getting you're going to be putting a newer gauge onto a newer readout onto a gauge you already have. You're going to be getting all the benefits of the Millimess 2000 without having to completely retool. So anywhere where you're using a snap gauge, you can put a Mahr comparator right in there, and you get that, again, increase in performance. And again, it's a standard 8mm shank. So this will not work on not only Mahr or Federal snap gauges, it'll work on Fowler, Mitutoyo, Starrett, basically any OEM snap gauge that's out there on the market, and it'll swap right into place. Again, the last variation on this theme is we can use the Millimess on a bore gauge. So you can see here I have it with a split ball style bore gauge. So this is a example of a split ball style bore gauge in a stand for more repeatable measurements, where you can see you have the two contacts down here, where you have your split ball down here, and as that goes into a bore, the split ball gets squeezed, it pushes up a contact up into the body and causes the indicator to move back and forth. Split ball bore gauges like this are very, very common for high accuracy applications or any type of application where you're measuring an ID. Again, you can just swap in the Millimess 2000 right into that gauge and get increased accuracy and resolution. It'll also work on sweeping style bore gauges, Dimentron style bore gauges, or Diatest style bore gauges as well. Finally, we have some target industries for the Millimess 2000 and 2001W. Again, I've been saying this a lot during this presentation, but they are really ideal for any sort of grinding, honing, or lapping operations. Anywhere where you're turning down a shaft or doing a finish hone on a bore, where you really, really care about the fine resolution. If you're talking inches, you're getting down to the 10th or 50 millionths, or even finer, down to the 5 or 10 millionth spot. Or if you're talking millimeters, once you're getting down to that sub-micron level of accuracy that you see in grinding and honing operations, the Millimess really lends itself to that type of environment and those type of measurements. And that's purely going to come down to that touchscreen display, the IP65 rating, and again, the high accuracy that you get from that LVDT. So some target industries from that are going to be any type of bearing manufacturer, hydraulics, medical device, aerospace, and automotive, or anywhere where you're seeing any type of grinding or honing or lapping, where you need that extra level of accuracy and your gauge needs to be able to survive in that type of environment. The Millimess is really going to lend its way into that type of application. Because as we know from grinding, honing, and lapping, you get a lot of dust, you get a lot of dirt, you get a lot of debris. If you have any type of a lubricant, like I have on this picture over here, any type of a lubricant or cutting oil, if you've ever worked with that stuff, as you know, it's very nasty, it smells, it gets into things. And because the Millimess 2001W has that touchscreen display, it really lends itself to those dirty, nasty environments where you have to be concerned about that sort of thing. So if we're looking at a competitive comparison here, our products, we can see that we're looking at the Mahr, the 434-6700, that's going to be the 2000W. If we're comparing that to the Mitutoyo 534-552A, you see you get a lot less range than the Mitutoyo part number, but you're getting a huge bump in accuracy compared to that unit, while getting, and also a much finer resolution. The Millimess will also have an IP65 rating, whereas the Mitutoyo will not. Same for the Starrett F2715AD, also IP65 rated. Millimess, again, compared to this unit, will give you an extra decimal place in resolution, and again, an extra decimal place in accuracy, but a little bit more range with 10 millimeter. Then you have the Fowler or the Silvac Nano, and the Millimess competes in the same sort of space that the Fowler Nano or the Silvac Nano operates in. But again, you're going to be getting a much higher level of accuracy than you will with the Fowler Silvac Nano. And compared to a Solitron style display where you have an LVDT and a SI3000 display, you're going to be getting similar ranges, 2 millimeters, getting much more accurate with the Millimess, and while getting the level of resolution and also IP65 rating. So we can see in the space, the Millimess 2000W, 2001W has a bunch of highly competitive features that place it well in the marketplace for competition against the other big players in the industry, Mitutoyo, Stowler, Ferret, get a really high level of resolution and accuracy compared to these units. It also should be noted that while the Mitutoyo unit here, the 534-552A, does have a color changing display if you go in or out of tolerance, just like the Mahr unit does. But that changing color tolerance display is not available on the Starrett or the Fowler offerings. You can get that sort of thing on the Solitron display, but again, as we showed earlier, when you're going from a single comparator to a LVDT probe with a gauging amplifier, you're going to have a significant step up in price compared to the Millimess 2000. So again, really competitive. We anticipate really good sales with this unit. We will be having a promotion coming up later in September. Keep your eyes out for that, where we're going to be doing a trade-in deal. The details will be released again at a later date to bring the price point of the Mahr unit down even further. Again, keep your eyes peeled for that. That will be coming out later in the month of September. So with that, I thank you all for attending. Thank you very much for coming along and taking a look at my presentation. So I highly appreciate all your time and attention. Now with that, I'm going to close the webinar. Within 24 hours, the webinar will be released to a link and sent to you via email, so you can look at it at that time. Again, you can review it at your leisure. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and have a long weekend coming up. Bye.